Welcome, everybody, to the second episode of the GovComms Collective. I'm your host, Hannah Elizabeth, and I'm so excited to be here today with Abby Hemenway. Her and I go way back. As I mentioned in the teaser trailer, I used to work at the Broward Metropolitan Planning Organization. And through one of my previous colleagues, Abby and I got connected, and we've just stayed in contact the last couple years. And it's just been so cool to watch her career evolve and like her involvement in all these professional organizations just grow. And she's been such an inspiration to get involved in the industry as a whole and using that as a growth opportunity. So I'm so excited for her to be here today to talk about her experience with the Florida Public Relations Association. And she also has earned her APR, which is the accreditation in public relations. So just major things going on in her life, and she's just such an idol. So thank you, Abby, for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to reconnect and yeah, just happy to be here
Oh,
today.
thank you. So let's start off and talk about your current role as the Public Information and Outreach Manager with the Space Coast Transportation Planning Organization. Can you talk
Yeah.
about the communities that you serve, why you
Yeah.
decided to start your career with the TPA over there, and just any fun little tidbits of information you'd like to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been with our Space Coast Transportation Planning Organization for about 7.5 years. It's been my longest stint in my careers thus far. And our organization is all about creating an efficient, safe transportation network for here in Brevard County for our residents. We're a really unique area. We're one of the only places in the world that has a spaceport. We have Port Canaveral, and then we have, airports and Brightline coming through. So it's a really active place to be for transportation. My career actually began in government. I've always been in the government field from the time that I started my career until now. I worked with Brevard County Parks and Rec for a little bit. Then I went to Brevard County School Board, and now I'm here with the Transportation Planning Organization. So I have a long stint in only the government field. I have a very public servant heart, and I love to serve our community. Space Coast residents are very different. We have a lot of aerospace, of course, because we have the space industry here, but then we have a lot of retired citizens as well. We also have a lot of families here in Brevard County that are putting down their roots. Beachside, of course, is a huge plus to our community as well because we line the East Coast. So a lot of variety in our community.
So working in government is a time. And
Yes. Yes, it is.
I remember when I was in school, nobody talked about working in government. It was always, oh, work for a Fortune 500 or work in house for a public relations
Yep.
company. So, how did you find your way into government? Was it something that you always knew you wanted to do? Was it kind of like by accident? How did you realize that
Yeah.
working for government is your passion?
It was a true happenstance. And I think the more that you talk to individuals in who have ended up as public information officers or PR professionals in the government field specifically, you're right. It's not an avenue that you can really choose when you're going to school. So, full disclosure, my background is not PR. I did not go to school for PR. I went for English. I'm a book nerd. I loved English and reading, and so I was like, okay, we can make a job out of this. And I really wanted to be an editor or a journalist. That was my goal. And so, by happenstance, right out of college, I went to UCF, go Knights, in Central Florida. I ended up moving to Brevard County because my significant other at the time had gotten a career opportunity here, didn't know anything about the Space Coast or Brevard County, and made the leap. And so when I landed here, soon realized there was not a metro area. It is a very, conservative beachside area, and there wasn't any real jobs in editing, writing, kind of that field. And so I kind of had to pivot a little bit, and I ended up just trying to look for anything, as a fresh 22-year-old out of college. And I ended up getting a job at an elementary school as a media assistant working in the library. I was like, well, I like books. I'll start here. And funny enough, that job was amazing. My lowest paid job of my entire career, but probably the most rewarding because it was so fun. And from there, I was allotted these amazing opportunities to go for different jobs that eventually elevated my career. And I can talk a little bit more about that. But yeah, a total happenstance that I even ended up in government. So I started at that elementary school, then ended up getting an office administrative job. That was really my skill set at the time, clerical. I was organized, very type A, as most of us are in this field. Um,
Absolutely.
so I ended up going and working at Brevard County Parks and Recreation as an office admin for about a year. And then I applied to be an executive administrative assistant for the Government and Community Relations Department with Brevard Public Schools. And that was really earning that role was really my introductory into public relations, crisis communications. I really credit a lot of my learning to my mentor at the time, my director. Shout out Michelle Irwin. She's amazing and a powerhouse. She really taught me all that I knew. She knew I could write. She saw a talent there and she decided to grow it and give me opportunity to really learn the public relations field and learn from an individual who was properly trained. So that role opened up the door for me. They promoted me within to media and publications coordinator. I was starting to handle media inquiries and really working with our community partners, and then was there for about 3.5 years, and then I went ahead and applied for this role. And funny enough, I had known someone who worked at the TPO. We had worked on events together through Brevard Public Schools, and that was how I came to learn about this role. And yeah, been here ever since.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, I know one of the things that a lot of people face throughout their careers, especially in government, is
Mhm.
the lack of funding or budget to invest in professional development,
Yep.
which I know I faced that. I know a lot of my colleagues have. How has working with the TPO been beneficial in your professional development, and what type of doors has it opened? Because
Yeah.
as we
Yeah.
mentioned earlier, you're very active. You're
Hmm.
the president of
Hmm.
the Florida Public Relations Association. You have your APR.
Hmm.
So, can you talk a little bit about the route that got you there?
Yeah, absolutely. Right before I had started at the Transportation Planning Organization, when I was working with my mentor at the time at Brevard Public Schools, she was a huge proponent of professional development. She had joined our local chapter, the Florida Public Relations Association, Space Coast FPRA. And so I actually began as a member there in 2016. And she encouraged me immediately to like get involved with the board. This might be a volunteer opportunity. And very clearly it became more than just networking with other communicators or professionals. It started to become a network where I could call someone if I had a question about something. It opened up doors to mentors, quite honestly, at that point in my career. Shortly thereafter, I made the transition to this current organization, the TPO, and I feel really blessed because our leaders here really do believe in professional development. They are very much whatever is going to set you up for success, whatever you might need training on. So I kind of came in with the mindset of this is an organization and an association that I want to stay with. How do you feel about that? Now, they had never had anyone a part of FPRA before, but they were very supportive. I think they could understand what I would get from it. Of course, in government, everything needs a justification letter. So, of course, I
Yep.
drew one up and talked about the benefits and the return on investment. And I think that's a big part to it's not that a government agency is automatically going to say no, but they need to understand the why and what are we going to get out of this. And so I feel like I've been trying to give back in that way to PIOs who might come into the government world to say, like, how do I navigate this? What do I tell my city manager? What do I tell my, you know, um, executive director? And a lot of the times that's just really simple of laying out what are you going to get from this association, and the benefit outweighs the cost a lot of the time. So specifically for me, without this association, my network of partners would be so limited. I'm very lucky that in our chapter we have a lot of government, we have nonprofit, of course we have aerospace. So, I can say if something is happening and I need to contact at Health First, one of our major health providers, I know someone, typically within an FPRA, who could give me that answer, or I could contact them first. Same goes for when we're working on transportation projects. A great example is the city of Cocoa, and our organization is currently working on trying to make sure that a Brightline train station comes to fruition in our county. And so we have to work very closely together. And I'll tell you, it's amazing to have a really good relationship with that PIO because we can contact each other if issues arise or if we need support from one another. So it's just been such a real blessing professionally and personally for me. I've been a part of that association since 2016, and 8 years of that I've served on the board. So it's something that I really believe in, and I think it really benefits all communicators and PR professionals. But you get what you put in is the biggest thing that I say about any association that you're involved in.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I serve on the executive committee for one of the PRSA sections,
Yeah,
and it's definitely you get what you put in. Like,
yeah,
especially the last 2 years that I've been serving,
yeah,
it has made such a difference, not only in my professional life, but my personal life as well. And just like fostering those relationships and getting to
yeah.
know people outside of the office. So it seems like you've had a similar
Yes.
experience, that it's not just an extracurricular for you, like
No.
it is a big part of your life.
Yeah, and when I've done board installations, I really try to inspire our members and not to get too gushy, but we are very much a family unit of sorts. We've seen each other go through marriages, divorces, babies, pets, job transitions, COVID. I mean, e- there's so many things that I can look back on my life, and FPRA has been so involved because these people have now become my friends. So I try to encourage when we have new board members coming on that like this is also a network where when you get to your 30s and 40s it's just hard to make friends out there. Like you're not in school anymore. Being friends with coworkers can only go so far, so it really does become a place of people who not only get you but get it. They understand what you're going through, what you're walking through, because a lot of the times as communicators, no matter the industry, we're all facing the same issues sometimes or the same concerns. And so it's just been such a nice place to go to vent or to celebrate. And again, it is what you put into it. So when I tell members, specifically new members, please make sure you come to events. Please make sure you have like meet us up for coffee. It's really the onus is on you to make sure that you take advantage of the full benefits of a membership, and that includes making sure that you stay connected.
For
Yeah.
sure. Thank you, Abby.
Yeah.
I know one of the things that can be a little intimidating with joining a new organization is
Mm.
the not knowing anybody and
Yeah.
like being nervous and
Yeah.
making your first impression. It's almost like dating again.
Yeah.
So, for those who are not currently involved in a professional organization, but they're interested in, maybe learning more, or getting involved in a local chapter,
Hmm.
how would you recommend them going about it to like ease some of those nerves, fully immerse and get
Yeah.
involved?
Yeah, it's funny, right? I think for PR and communicators, even though a lot of the times we have to be on in whatever facet that is, a lot of us still have like that social anxiety that
Yes,
like,
100%.
I don't want to be networking, right? And I'm the same way. But I think the biggest part is putting yourself out there is part of it. Yes, there is, a responsibility for that association to make sure they're doing outreach as well. And for I can only speak to the Space Coast chapter. The last couple of years, we have been very cognizant of like if we see new members at events, we go up, we introduce ourselves, we make sure that they, maybe connect with a board member who can kind of be like their mentor, their buddy, making sure that they check in on them. But you also have to let a piece of yourself go a little bit and make sure that you connect with us as well. But yeah, I think it's difficult sometimes for people to connect those dots. I would just say be your authentic self. I'm very much that way during events and in the FPRA world. Like I just really appreciate authenticity. And so for our association, we love to laugh, we love to have a good time. Sometimes we're silly, inappropriate, and I think that sometimes, like, that's just life. Of course, there's a time and a place for everything, professionally speaking, but I think just being authentic and reaching out to the leaders, I would say, is the first part. If they haven't reached out to you, which they should be doing, go up to them at an event and let them know who you are, what you do, and we always try to leave time for connection, is what we call it, connection time instead of networking, because it's not a business to business, like let's trade business cards. It's not what this is about. It's more bridging connections and making deep connections, I would say too, not just surface level ones.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
So, aside from these connection times, what are some of the events that FPRA hosts, or what are
Yeah.
some of the biggest takeaways that you've had as a member?
Yeah. I think this is like two pronged because we have our state association, the Florida Public Relations Association, which kind of oversees our entire association. We have 16 different chapters. So, the Space Coast is just one underneath a huge umbrella. And so there are some amazing programs that the state puts on, but I'll speak first to kind of the chapter level. So for our chapter, every chapter is different, just like every, area of Florida is very different. And so part of our responsibility is really making sure that we survey our members to see what they want. We've had some PR practitioners who have been on the Space Coast for years that are retired. And then we have this whole new generation coming in that, wants different professional development opportunities. So we're really keyed into like making sure that we survey our members is a huge part. We don't want to be the dictators of what programs we're doing. So, one piece of it is professional development opportunities. That's the biggest thing that we promote. We have between 6 to 8 professional development programs a year. And those can be on a variety of topics, anywhere from crisis communications to social media trends, um, video. I mean, we try to really cover all different parts of communications and industries, like what's going to make the most sense. So we routinely, again, like survey our members to see what topics are interesting to them. Internal communications is another big one. As our chapter, we also offer other things like connection time and also community service events. So we might have an event that's more about meeting up for coffee in the new year to see what's everyone's, goals this year. How can we support each other? Something a little bit more informal. We have found that our members really love to connect with one another in just like a chill atmosphere sometimes that takes the professional development out of it. And it's really just about reconnecting. And then we also try to service our community. So we hold some outreach events where our members can get involved. For example, for Christmas, we're going to be partnering with an underserved school and doing a toy drive. And not only will we collect items for these students who really, this is the only Christmas that they see, is if these toys come in through a collection, but also we'll be learning about this specific school is a partnership school. At the end of the day, the school offers services to these students that is very unique, dental, health. It's just a very unique circumstance. So we're going to educate our members a little bit about this if they're not keyed into that community, to really let them know what kind of services this school is providing and ultimately who they're giving back to at the end of the day. So a lot of different facets for our chapter. At the state level, some of the best things that I've been involved with have been at the association level. So one thing that I really enjoyed was the state association has a program called Leadership FPRA. This is a program where it brings together chapter leaders or chapter representatives from across the state, and you learn all about different facets of leadership. So this is normally, geared towards people who want to either grow within their organization or grow within their chapter, whatever that looks like. And it was such an amazing program to be a part of, because not only did I really earn, some leadership cred at the end of the day for professional development, but the relationships that I made through that program have been so beneficial. To now have statewide contacts is a different level. The longer that I've been in FPRA, the more people you get to know. And so that's been a really fun part of my journey. And that same year that I did that program was when I earned my APR. So it kind of lit a fire under me to continue to grow in PR.
That's amazing. I'm sure that
Yeah.
was a pretty big time suck in a good way.
Yes. Yeah. It
How
was a
did
wild year.
Yeah, how did you manage that? Like working full time and doing the leadership and APR and having a family. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a lot.
Um, yeah, that's just like me in a nutshell. It's like I either go big or go home. It's funny because when I chose to pursue my APR and do leadership FPRA the same year, like my FPRA friends like didn't even bat an eye. They're like, "Well, yes, that's you," because it's like,
Well,
you
of
know me,
course,
I
why
do
wouldn't you
everything
do
to the
this?
100th degree. Um, well, the thing is, especially with your APR, and I can chat more about this, there will never be a good time. This is what I hear from our members all the time when I go to encourage them to pursue accreditation, because it really changed my career. Um, they always say, "Oh, now's not the right time." I'm like, "It's never going to be the right time." But it's all about investing in yourself and saying, "You know what? I'm going to do this for myself." And I think what the APR opens up is opportunities to realize your professional self-worth and to say, you know what, I do know what I'm talking about. And I have earned the credibility, but now it's just documenting it and putting the right seal on it. And one of the biggest reasons I wanted to pursue my APR was because I didn't go to school for public relations. And so, you hear like imposter syndrome all the time. And even though I know that I earned my place to be here, there was something that inside of me that was like, I do feel like I'm missing maybe some foundational elements of public relations. And so I'm a lifelong learner. And so as soon as I had a mentor in place for my APR, I'd say that's another huge thing to make sure that you have the right mentor to walk you through the process. I was like, all right, let's do it. And it really isn't a scary process. I think there's a lot of misinformation about the APR and people get really in their head about it, but it's definitely benefited my career tenfold. It gave me the confidence to pitch a reclass. It gave me the confidence to really make sure that I aligned myself with where I wanted to be financially and professionally moving forward. And I was very blessed that, my leadership was supportive and also realized that this would benefit me long term as I continue to grow.
Thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that. I know pursuing the APR is definitely on my list. I just finished up my master's and I'm like,
Yes.
I need a break from school for a
Yeah.
little
Right.
bit.
And it does have to be the right time for you. I know I'm sitting here
Yeah,
saying there's never a right time, but it is a commitment, right? And so,
right.
like any commitment, like going through a master's program too, that's nothing to bat an eye out. That's a commitment of time. And so, the nice thing about the APR, though, is that from the minute that you apply for it, you have a year to complete the entire process. And it's a two-pronged process of doing a panel presentation and then sitting for a computer-based test. So, you have time. There's so much resources, and my biggest thing is to just make sure you have a cheerleader in your corner that's holding you accountable, because it's really easy to be like, I don't want to study tonight. Yeah, I don't know. I'll work on my panel presentation next week, and it's easy to fall into that kind of path.
Can you talk a little bit more about the panel presentation? What was
Sure.
that like for you? Like, what
Yeah.
type of questions did they ask? What did you
Yeah.
talk about? Yeah.
Yeah. So for the accreditation public relations, like I said, that's a two-part process. And typically you have to do your panel presentation first, which is you select a project or plan that you have been involved with. You can use something from your current workplace or a previous employer. I normally encourage anyone sitting for their panel to pick a project that you know like the back of your hand. Um, Pick one that you had a lot of involvement in, because there will be questions asked. And so for my panel presentation, I had just come onto the TPO and I had to redo our public participation plan. And the previous one was not user friendly, very hard to follow just logically, and it wasn't really visually engaging. So I thought, this would be a great time to redo this document. Fast forward to my APR, I chose that project even though it was really a deliverable at the end of the day, not really a project, but more of a deliverable redesign. There's still elements to that panel presentation that I was able to use to my advantage, and making sure that I selected that plan because, again, I was the one that kind of was the project manager of it. The biggest thing when it comes to your panel presentation is what they're testing you on ultimately is that you understand the RPI method, which is research, planning, implementation, and evaluation. Those are the four key aspects, and it comes back into play because a lot of it is asked during your computer-based tests. It's a lot of scenario-based testing. So you have to understand that our pie process, and a lot of it we're doing in our day to day, right? Like we're just not documenting it when we do a project or plan, but it's a lot of what you're already doing. When you start a new project or a new initiative, what do you do first? What are my sister organizations doing? You do a little Google search, and that counts as research. It's just, making sure that you get the right terms, informal, formal research, and then the planning, again, we're already doing it. Most likely you have an Excel spreadsheet with a timeline, with tactics that you're going to do, with specific milestones you want to reach. So, a lot of these things we're already doing in our day to day. It's just really putting them into motion and documenting it. And I've sat on a few panels now, which has been really rewarding as a panelist and not on the other side of it. It's very easy to get in your head about the panel presentation, but my biggest thing is that those panelists are in your corner. They want you to move forward with your APR. What they're there to do is to check to make sure that you understand that RPI method, because it is so heavily the base of earning your credentials. And so, again, I have sat on a few panels. It's been really fun to be a part of that. The types of questions that they're always going to ask typically tie back to metrics. Everything is measured, right? Or it needs to be. And so, a lot of the things that they'll ask is, how did you measure its success? What type of data did you collect, and how is it relevant? How has it changed the project? Does this actually measure up to what you thought it was going to be? So a lot of it is typically about measurements and strategy. So uh, I've seen a lot of panels before. I've heard a lot about them. Rarely ever does anyone fail a panel, if ever. They're really in your corner at the end of the day.
I have heard such amazing stories about people who have pursued and received their APR, and it's
Mhm.
definitely high on my list. So thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
We are just about out of time, but I did want
Okay.
to touch on briefly. You said that at your current job, they were very
Mhm.
supportive of you
Mhm.
pursuing your APR. And I
Yes.
know that there's a lot of organizations, especially in government, that do support tuition.
Mm.
Was this something that your job helped offset the cost for, or how did you have that conversation with them?
So they did not. I took this cost on myself because I wanted it to follow throughout my career. I didn't want it to be on someone else's dime, so to speak. Now, the TPO already pays for my association membership. They also are incredible and pay for our annual conference that we have because it's one of the only professional development conferences that I asked for. So, because I felt like this was more personally aligned with where I want to go here and beyond, so to speak, that cost was on myself. However, I will say that they were extremely supportive if I had to like offset hours because I wanted to study or anything like that. They're just to be transparent, everyone's an adult. They want to, make sure that I make up my time and things like that. But very supportive in that regard. But because specifically it was aligned to more so what I want to do now and in the future, it wasn't really covered underneath the organization's professional development budget. But again, I think that was a choice that I just made myself, not one that was made for me by the organization.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, not everyone is blessed to work somewhere where they
Yeah.
are supported to pursue things like this.
Hmm.
If someone is interested in earning their APR, but they don't have the support of their organization, would you recommend them still pursuing it?
Absolutely. This is where if you're wanting to pursue something that is going to benefit you long term professionally, but you can't do it during work hours or you can't, have your organization foot the bill, so to speak, I still think it's worth the monetary expense and the time that you're going to invest to better your own career going forward. The nice thing about the APR is that it's recognized nationally. So some certifications, are only recognized within your own state. But if you ever chose to relocate, or you ever chose to, pursue a different job or anything like that, it would follow you. And so, again, to me, it just reaffirms that you are accredited in public relations. You have a seat at that table. I think that was my biggest drive. My organization, again, very lucky. They already respect my opinion. Public relations is my domain, and in transportation, the majority of them are engineers and planners, and that's not their background.
Yeah.
But for me personally, it was to say, like, no, I have this seat at this table. I do know what I'm talking about. And I'm here to also, provide guidance. But yeah, again, I would 100% be behind someone making sure that you pursue something that's going to benefit you long term, whether it's with your organization or beyond. It's really for your own professional growth. And if you are a lifelong learner and you have, the time to commit to pursuing your APR, I would recommend it. It benefited my career tenfold.
Well, thank you so much
Yeah.
for sharing your experience, Abby. It has been
Yes.
such a pleasure to talk with you. So, we are at
Yes.
time now. But if you have any last thoughts that you'd like to share with the audience, I'll open up the floor to you.
Sure. I think my last thought would just be, especially for my government peeps, don't get caught in the red tape. It's a really easy for someone to come to you and say, I'm not sure. And my pushback to you would be like, make sure that you're advocating for yourself. I think it's really easy in any industry to feel bogged down, but specifically in government. And when it comes to community relations or communications and PR, it almost seems always like like it's an afterthought, right? And so think about it this way. I'm just going to relate transportation planning. would they be supportive of a professional engineer or an AICP? Absolutely, they would. So make sure that you're advocating for yourself. Just because you might not be, the backbone of that industry doesn't mean that you don't have a place there and that you shouldn't advocate for your professional development. So I would just, say make sure that you advocate for yourself and have that backup documentation, because most likely 9 times out of 10, they just want the reason why and the benefit.
Definitely.
Yeah.
With all of my jobs, I've always had to face that. The paperwork is the best part.
Yes, exactly.
Well, thank you again for joining us and for taking the
Thank you.
time out of your very, very busy schedule
Yeah.
to share your experience with our audience.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Hannah, for having me. I appreciate you.
Thank you.